Hey everybody, happy Sunday. This is Lynn Sharif, and I am here to talk about the top 10 marriage killers. I have been covering this series, and you can scroll back on my social media pages, and I have covered several top 10 marriage killers. I've talked about toxic people, I've talked about bad communication, I've talked about social media. I've also talked about the lack of time commitment. And this past week, I talked about addiction as being a marriage killer. And I am going to, of course, talk about or tell you the obligatory things that you're not alone. I dropped some really interesting statistics on this past Monday about the millions of people who are dealing with some sort of addiction with their spouse. I'm also going to tell you that help is available, that you are not alone, and that if you want to get help, there is help out there. But I really want to spend my few minutes with you on this Sunday evening talking about something that's related to addiction, but I really think it's going to impact a whole lot more people. And that is the idea of numbing or escapism. Really, if you look at one of the bases of addiction is that they are not able to deal with some aspect of their lives. So they are on drugs or alcohol, perhaps pornography. But really, is it something that is more subtle with more of us? So instead of really dealing with things, maybe it's you have 6 blouses, but you need 7 or 8 more. Or perhaps you are scrolling social media just a little bit too long. Or perhaps you are binge watching just a few more episodes than you really should, or getting another helping or two of peach cobbler more than you should because you are escaping a particular aspect of your life that you're not happy with. And if that is you, I can relate. Because there was absolutely a chapter in my life when I was numbing or escaping to deal with something instead of dealing with something. And the reason that I did that is because life is life, right? You have certain things that are going on in your life and there may not be answers to it. As a married person, everything is not going to have a very easy answer. And so instead of dealing with it, perhaps you might be engaging in numbing. You may even be calling it coping. This is just what I need to do to just get through. And so I'm going to also share with you something that I interestingly enough heard it this week. We had a pastor couple come visit our church this week. It was Pastor Reggie and London Royal, and they described a certain they called a principle of communication, and they called it having from birth conversations. So in other words, talking about those things that impact you, that might be influencing your behavior, something that happened in your life, perhaps from since you were born. I have referred to it in other Facebook Lives as radical honesty. And that is speaking those truths that are in your soul that you may not feel it's necessary to even talk about, but I'm telling you that it is necessary to talk about. And so for me, I was able to speak some radical honesty to my spouse. So maybe a radical honesty for you might be, you know what, I don't really like your career choice, or I'm having some real problems with your family. I don't like our sex life. I mean, whatever that thing is that you're thinking, I can't really talk about that. I'm here to tell you that if you're not talking about it, and if you are engaging in numbing behavior because you believe that this is what we need to do in order to cope, it's something that you really should consider putting it on the table. And maybe you may not recognize yourself in anything that I've talked about. Maybe this isn't resonating. And if that is the case, I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to ask you to ask your spouse, do I spend an inappropriate amount of time, resources, or energy on anything other than this marriage? And I'm going to repeat that. Do I spend an inappropriate amount of time, resources, or energy on anything other than this marriage? That may generate some really interesting conversations between you and your spouse. So this evening, I've told you about the past top 10 marriage killers that I've covered. We also talked about addiction and about the fact that you can get help, that you are not by yourself, but that I also wanted to discuss with you areas in your life where you might be numbing or escaping from a particular issue in your marriage. And how is it that you can get past that to no longer numb, but to actually put the issues on the table that may be important in your marriage? And last, I gave you an assignment to ask your spouse, am I spending an inappropriate amount of time, resources, or energy on anything other than this marriage? And I really hope that this generates some good conversation in your relationship. So next week, join me for the next top 10 marriage killer. I really appreciate you guys tuning in for tonight. You take care. Bye-bye.